So the idea is to have a panel discussion with Diego, Carlos, and I'm going to act as a moderator. Yeah, the idea is to make questions for both of them and to have an open discussion between the two of them. So yeah, I open the floor for the both of them. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing in order to you to see us. The idea now is that let's see if we can start with Giacomo. Giacomo, I don't know if you wanted to unmute yourself and ask. If not, I will make the question for the two panelists by myself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, hi everybody. Very nice work. I was just asking about the link between the two works, how this could be done, whether you already thought about this, and especially since I'm more familiar with the clustering side of these things, whether you could extract a bit extra information that could be directly linked to the different sectors of interest. So the presence of a PV or the presence of electric vehicles charging that could emerge from the fingerprints of the load profiles or not, or whether this information is at all useful or not in trying to link in the two questions. So yeah, a bit of thoughts about this would be great. Thanks.
So the question would be the influence of the PV or the electric vehicles or insulation, as I am reading here in the chat, with or even the efficiency appliance of the appliances to the factors identified. I imagine that the factors means the different patterns, consumption patterns, isn't it? How would they link would be the question.
Well, first, how the clustering could account to these things. I guess that somehow, I don't know how much in the sample that you consider these aspects of the technologies are accounted. So this is one part. Second part, whether this has anything to do with the work the last were presented. So whether one could somehow link the profiles that you get in the first part with the profiles that you are in the second, or whether you just consider all the possible matches and or you can discard some.
Okay, I mean, if you want, I can ask for the first question, with the first part of the question, that would be that influence of the efficiency of the house, you know, into the clustering. So I imagine that, I mean, since, I mean, you're applying efficiency methods, I mean, to obtain a household which is or which is more efficient when consuming energy, I imagine that this would be reflected into the clustering. So, I mean, in the case that there were some houses, imagine that you are clustering two groups of houses, ones that has insulation and others that doesn't have it. Obviously, I mean, the ones that have the insulation would be more efficient at the time of consuming the electricity. So I imagine that those electricity consumptions would be reflected on the clustering. Because, I mean, we would see that certain consumptions are reduced at certain time slots, let's say. So I imagine that this would be reflected there. This is what I think. I don't know if anyone wants to add something.
May I try? So, well, Giacomo, for me, this is the question, actually. So thank you very much for raising this this idea, because that was something that we were discussing before the presentation started, and maybe yesterday even. So actually, energy consumption and investment decisions are two different things which might be separated, but in both of them, we can handle something which is very relevant, which are the correlation which we might find between the curves that Carlos has presented, or the the time series, okay, or with the socio-economical profiles that we have behind them. And in the data sets that we have, actually, we know that there are some mappings. Still, this is a work that we have not done. So trying to map the socio-demographics with the load profiles is something pending to do. But on the opposite side, on my side, the one that I have presented, again, we presented the archetypes or the personas, and we can obtain from them socio-demographics, okay? So if we can also link for the investments, the kind of persona, how can I know that I'm an early adopter? Or how can I know that I'm stubborn? Or how can I know that I'm fearful? So by using maybe some information from the socioeconomics, if we can map those two things, actually socioeconomic questions are the ones that which have the link for the both approaches. So if we might find a way for understanding whether there are some socioeconomical characteristics or cultural factors that they map the load consumption and the type of investor that we might be, I think that it is the link that so that will be the Rosetta Stone that we need on the in-between for linking the two works that we have presented so far. I don't know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, thanks. That makes sense.
And the key point is that this link could exist or could not exist. So this is something that we need to explore. It will be awesome if we found it, because it will simplify a lot the discussion and the application and the future in implementation of the solution. But it's something that we need to look for. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, just to contribute to that, I would say purely socioeconomic data are, in my feeling, never going to be sufficient to match with the other characteristics. But in the survey that we did, we asked a little bit more than just the purely socioeconomic data. So apart from what's the family income, how many kids, what are your times at home and at work and things like that, we also asked for what your decision making profile was, and I can't remember what we called the other one, but also so more related to how you reach your decisions and how do you describe yourself, what your knowledge is about climate, your awareness is about climate, and your attitude towards that. So maybe these can help to link to the more psychological profiles. But without those data, I doubt it that you can make a match.
The key point, Chris, is that if we, I mean, one of the block of questions that we made is using a kind of similar archetype profiles that the Natch project has found for a similar context, but not exactly the same. And what we have asked is to self-assign themselves to one of each profile. This is something that we are going to do later on, but the key idea is that if you go to the National Statistics Bureau or Eurostat or this kind of things, you don't get this kind of information. What the information that you have is socioeconomic description. And the idea is, can we infer something from the socioeconomic description towards this mapping? It's not that you are of this archetype, but okay, this population that I don't know, I have not asked, and I don't have any way of asking or making a survey. Can we know by socioeconomic description, I mean, a distribution of the archetypes, rough distribution with their confidence margin and these kind of things? How far or how much are we going to be able to be confident on this mapping? I mean, and this kind of thing. This is the kind of question that we wanted to go next. And this is the kind of Rosetta Stone that was Diego saying, because if we have that information and we get something that we can make more or less confident, the upscaling that I have been discussing before, it's going to be simple. If not, then we are going to need to ask by survey, and this is going to be costly and more difficult to make this kind of inference in large scale simulation. I mean, going to a household is just 30 or 40 question survey, 5 minutes, that's it. I can have a profile for you. But doing for a population of 1 million, well, we are going to start. We are starting having problems. So this is the kind of difficulties.
Yeah, I do understand. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is any more question for the public? No. Well, I have a couple of questions that I wanted to raise to the speakers. The first one is simple. I mean, it's how do you see that these results can be used in a policy making context? I mean, I think that Diego has already shown a slide that is quite relevant. But I think that I don't know if you could provide a little bit more of what do you see, or how do you think this could be implemented in policy making, let's say.
Which part of the presentation?
Choose yourself. I mean, your results. I mean, the 40. I mean.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, this question is linked to what I said in the beginning of my presentation. I mean, those results. I mean, having different patterns of electricity consumption. The idea of those patterns is to have a general overview of the different kinds of consumers that there are. So with those patterns, for example, they can be reused within the energy system models. And energy system models, I mean, they are generally used by policymakers to model to midterm and long-term scenarios of consumption. So, I mean, in that case, I think that our results are absolutely focused on that direction. I mean, in order to make life of policymakers more accurate than it is today, I think. I mean, they can use our solutions to obtain results more accurate, and then the policies that they design can be more adjusted to the reality than today. This is what I think.
Thank you, Carlos. Diego, wanted to provide.
Yeah, so again, as Carlos said at the beginning of my presentation, I think that the results from the policymakers are very relevant. What I see from my side, for the part actually that I have presented, it is that it might serve a lot for creating actually the right regulations, or the right policies with behavioral change ideas on top. And I explain myself. So usually what we have seen from the governments or from the local authorities is that usually always they offer tax for saving money. And this is usually very good for instance, do one state investment, for instance, which is now making sure that the PV panels will be installed in all the roofs of all the countries in Europe. Okay, that may be served as a way for going for that. But if we overlook other aspects, which might be more like as I pointed out before, such as what is the safety that this entails? what are which is the impact that it will have for my family, for my daily living. If we don't understand actually that we are changing people of all kinds, and we are an interconnected society, it will be very difficult only by putting some economic incentives the way for actually seeing a real change on the energy transition. So, and something that I think that it was very nice for the way in which we address the problem of the energy transition. It is not just putting like the people to think whether, oh yes, should I change my appliances from ones which are more efficient, or should I keep the ones that I have? So this is the scenario that is very close for our daily current life. But when we have pushed the externals and the experts towards scenarios in which they have to understand what will be the factors that a person will do for serve their own appliances, or for leave their car for forever, or for creating a completely autosufficiency building. So those kind of scenarios, I think, that are the ones from which we can draw relevant conclusions from the future policies to come. So as I said, it is not about economical incentives, but we have to start by understanding that the needs and the understandings that we have from the energy transition are not only from the economic side, but have many other factors to take into account.
Yeah, thank you, Diego. I think that this is a good point. I don't know if anyone from the audience wanted to say anything, to have any point something. No? Okay. I have also a couple of questions more. I'm going to raise one. Is just the first one is, how do you see themselves these results combining with the rest of the activities that we are doing in the project? I mean, how do you plan, or what are the potential reusing of this solution by not inside the project, but also by other researchers that could be in the audience? And I don't know, Diego, perhaps you can start for a change.
Yeah, sure. Of course, very well. I'm happy this is very, very much. So actually, what we are creating are causal diagrams, and then the next steps is to create the causal model. So, for instance, when we will set a goal, which is what are the probability that a family unit with these characteristics will uptake the public transport in the following, let's say, 2 years. I think that the way in which the models that we are creating is that the policymakers or other researchers or other interested stakeholders can really understand the flow of causes and decisions and the probability that those causes and effects has. And this is, for me, the way in which we can really make others to draw results on top of ours. So creating, adequating the results that we are providing to the models to see whether they can run interesting forecasts depending on the different scenarios that may appear. Because we might try to, for instance, incentivize the people to change from the fossil cars to the energy vehicles. But if tomorrow we have an issue with all the providers of petroleum or gas, or the things that we are looking and witnessing actually for the different politics issues that are occurring on our world, we can see that we cannot actually do simple predictions, but we need those kind of models which will be robust enough for putting in place a specific, not unlikely events such as the ones that we have commented before. So I think that that knowledge that we will bring from the project are the one which will be more relevant for the interconnection of the different work packages, ideas, and the connection with other advisory board and other projects, sister projects, and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Diego said. I mean, the question of reusing the results is really, really interesting because, I mean, in this project, we are generating tons of data. I mean, just starting from the fact that we are, for example, just by the fact of having gathered a lot of data sets and computing the features of them. I mean, this is a lot of information that we cannot leave apart. I mean, this is a lot of information that we can reuse, and we should reuse. So, for example, if you ask me how would I reduce the data right now, for example, the first idea that it comes to me up is for example, I would do a better assess of the, for example, of the temporal evolution of the data sets. For example, that analysis that we have done comparing the pre and the post-COVID data sets could be, for example, improved if you go instead of analyzing clusters, just going by persons. I mean, going not persons but households. I mean, a particular time series. By doing this kind of comparisons, comparing a time series of a particular household to those 40 top 40 patterns that we have obtained, and see if they have changed throughout the time. This would be an option. Other option would be, as Diego said, for example, reusing all our data to forecast. There are a lot of things to forecast. I mean, for example, or for example, comparing our data to other possible data that we can obtain. For example, if you go to the time use survey, you can do an analysis of if the appliances that people is using and the aggregate of the appliances can be compared to any of the patterns of consumption that we have already obtained, and if you go over following that path, I mean, probably you can use it to do some more interesting forecasts of energy consumption. So yes, I mean, I think that we are generating a lot of data that is really, really useful, and that it can be and should be reused using, I mean, other, I mean, with the help of other data sets, different data sets, or to improve or to generate forecasts. And also, I mean, another thing that that I can talk about is, I mean, not only reusing data, but also the infrastructure that we have. Because, I mean, we have generated a lot of code to obtain all those data, and all those code is publicly available. Everybody can have a look, reuse it. It's at GitHub, anyone can use it. So, I mean, all those things can be and should be reused. I mean, it would be a pity if they would get lost at the end of the project.
Yeah, in fact, you are raising a very good point. I mean, about the reusability. I mean, what kind of information are we going to provide from the project? I mean, you have mentioned the code, but also it's going to be some data. Carlos, Diego, could you
also the deliverables, the papers? I mean, there's a lot of information that it's being generated that can be useful. I don't know if I'm leaving any other. I mean, Diego, what do you think?
Well, so the good thing about the Horizon projects that everything will be open, aligned with the open research, and there is a way of ensuring that the experiments, the work that we have done, it is actually replicable, reusable. And for that, we are just following the open research standards. And the good thing about so maybe there is a missing point from the academia is that we should not only provide the data by opening the data sets, but making them more provide guidelines for using them in an appropriate manner. Because usually when we look at the coding that we have, the things that we upload to GitHub or the open repositories in Odoo and so forth, are just things which are stored, such as it was our such a place in which we don't care enough. So maybe what we should ensure is not only for the right project, ensure that replicability, openness, etc. will be a must, but also the quality. So for the others to not lose 1 week or 1 month to understand any line of code or any line of data for starting to work on top of that. Okay, so I think that actually this kind of ideas, actually as the thing that we are doing today, which is opening the results, it is a way to ensure that our insights and results can be reusable, because we are putting faces behind the experiments. We are putting souls behind the data, and I think that will be something very good for opening the research for others.
Yep, I mean, I completely agree with you with the topic of the quality of the code. I mean, I always try to comment on every line of my code, and even in the repositories, I also try to explain what every program is doing. So, I mean, yes, I mean, this is important that every project explains really well what their code is doing when they are placing them into the repositories, so that everyone can reuse it, and that all those work that, as Diego said, comes from people, from souls. I mean, don't get lost. So that's a good point, Diego.
Yeah, I have just put in the chat the repository of the Zenodo community of the project, where we are uploading some data sets. As soon as we get proper legal advice,
Validation.
Legal validation, that we can share them. Also, we have some repositories. I have been looking for them, and I think that this is one of them. But there is others. They have to look. And now that we mentioned, most probably we should put a web page where all those links should be there. I think that this is something that we should do in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has any more questions for the panelists. Any more intervention?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Armando.
I just want to mention some comments about us. Will be really interesting, I think, thinking about the population, how we are going to measure or estimate the impact of the intervention. And as well, I am thinking that the cluster could be a really good example of how that intervention could get or could work out different levels of impact based on the strata, thinking about on a cluster like a strata, that the same intervention could benefit more one strata than another one. I mean, we have 2 different levels of impact. The one that we have in the full population and the one we are going to get based on stratas, based on this cluster. And those profiles, for me, looks really interesting how they are going to react to the intervention we could do. So that's it, my only comment. Thinking about the cluster, thinking about the full population we already have, and thinking about the intervention we could do.
Indeed, Fernando, very, very good comments actually. So take into account when we are pursuing the endeavor of the different tasks.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you. By the way, great presentation, both of them. Thank you.
So, is there any more questions? Comments? If not, let's thank the panelists and the presenters of the meeting again for their wonderful presentation and the results. Thank you everyone for attending the meeting. Yeah, see you next. So I have a couple of announcements for everyone. Apart from the summer course that I have already mentioned, on the 13th of July, we are going to have a similar session as this one, where we are going to show a little bit more of results that we have been gathered in the project. So there is going to be a second session on this topic. And also you can see in the webpage other events that we are going to have later on this year. We are going to be very active showing us results as we are starting to produce actual results. So keep you in the loop. Also, please subscribe our newsletter, because this is the best place to keep up to date on the project. So thank you everyone for attending this meeting, and see you soon